resilient and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Cypress Village Retirement Community offers carefree lakefront living with a variety of residential options, a wealth of services and amenities, and a full calendar of fun and engaging activities. As a life care community, Cypress Village makes aging in place simple.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and on today's First Coast Connect, a rebuilding year from the Jags Stadium to a new jail. We talk with reporter David Bauerlein about what stories he'll be watching and what we need to watch in 2026. Then a local exhibit inspired by the visionary Spanish architect Antoni Gaudí and a near-death experience of the artist. We'll tell you how you can check out the exhibit this month. And the Jags trample the Titans to officially control the division. We discuss how they turned the season around for Coach Cohen. Join our conversation. You can reach us on air by calling 904-549-2937, or you can go to firstcoastconnect.org to find all the ways to connect with us. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The deposed leader of Venezuela has been moved to the federal courthouse in New York City. NPR's Carrie Johnson reports Nicolas Maduro will make his first U.S. court appearance later today.
Maduro faces 4 charges, including narco-terrorism and conspiracy to import cocaine into the United States. The grand jury in New York also charged his wife, the former Attorney General of Venezuela. Maduro's expected to challenge the extraordinary way he was captured inside his own nation's capital. But the Trump administration appears to be relying on Supreme Court precedent, suggesting the capture itself may not matter. Former GOP Attorney General Bill Barr likens the Maduro arrest to how the U.S. government handled Panama's leader, Manuel Noriega, more than 35 years ago. An American jury eventually convicted Noriega after a long legal battle. Carrie Johnson, NPR News, Washington.
Some oil industry analysts are weighing in about President Trump's decision to arrest Maduro and his wife. Trump has made it clear that part of the U.S. operation is about control of Venezuela's oil. NPR's Julia Simon has more on Venezuelan oil deposits.
Venezuela has massive oil resources, and U.S. oil companies first started drilling there a century ago. But around 2007, then-President Hugo Chavez forcibly renegotiated oil contracts. ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips left and took Venezuela to court. The courts ordered Venezuela pay the companies over $11 billion combined. Oil experts tell NPR that for some oil companies, coming back could be a way to recoup money owed. Next door to Venezuela is Guyana, a key emerging oil player with a big ExxonMobil presence. For years, Guyana and Venezuela have had territorial disputes, also related to oil. Oil experts tell NPR with President Maduro gone, U.S. oil investments in Guyana are more secure. Julia Simon, NPR News.
Tomorrow is the 5th anniversary of the attack on the U.S. Capitol building by pro-Trump supporters. Some of the rioters were peaceful, others were violent. The Trump administration has worked to erase all government records of the January 6th insurrection. NPR's Tom Dreisbach says NPR is preserving that evidence.
We've tracked every single January 6th case from the very beginning in a public and searchable database. It's more than 1,500 cases in total. And now that the administration has deleted the government's database, this really is the most comprehensive resource on those cases out there. Since the beginning, we've been focused on the facts, evidence presented and evaluated in court, not just political rhetoric. And January 6th is probably the most videotaped crime in history. So we systematically reviewed thousands of videos. We added hundreds to the database so people can look at them, and we created a visual timeline of that day's events.
NPR's Tom Dreisbach reporting. You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News, 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It is 9:04. A veteran Jacksonville police officer's been reassigned after getting arrested for driving under the influence in St. Johns County last week. The sheriff's office says Raymond Gotha was arrested after a St. Johns County deputy pulled him over late Friday on US 1. Gotha was off duty at the time and driving a personal vehicle. This is the first JSO employee arrest of the new year. Governor Ron DeSantis appoints another member to St. Augustine's embattled airport board. Noah Hertz reports attorney Daniel Bean will take the seat vacated in October by Jennifer Leota.
Jennifer Leota cited concerns about how the board was being run in her resignation. She also didn't want her lawsuit against the 3 other members of the board who resigned last year to get in the way of her role. The lawsuit accuses former board members Reba Ludlow, Len Tucker, and Dennis Clark of targeting her and the flight school she runs with her husband. If confirmed by the Florida Senate, Bean will be the 4th appointment DeSantis has made to St. Augustine's Airport Authority Board in the past year. The only sitting board member elected by St. Johns County voters is Michelle Cash Chapman. Noah Hertz, WJCT News, 89.9.
Partly sunny skies this afternoon in northeast Florida with temperatures reaching the upper 60s to lower 70s with the light winds. Overnight lows will get down into the upper 40s to lower 50s. Dense fog is possible again during the early morning hours, mainly for inland areas. Dry and warm through the middle of the work week.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Lilly Endowment, a private foundation supporting NPR's coverage of religion and spirituality, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, we kick off our first show of the new year with a look ahead. Veteran journalist David Bauerlein shares his reporter's notebook, offering a glimpse of key local stories he'll be tracking in 2026. Later in the program, art that doesn't kill you makes you stronger. We'll tell you about the near-death experience that inspired an artistic tribute to famed Spanish architect Antoni Gaudí. But first, 2026 promises to be a rebuilding year, literally, with construction projects dominating the expected headlines, from the Jags Stadium of the future to the future home of a new jail. Here to tell us about the top 10 stories he'll be following, we're joined by Florida Times Union City Hall reporter David Bauerlein. Good morning, David.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks so much for being here. So the theme of your story on this was, Jacksonville will see a lot of new construction projects in 2026, a lot of renovations, new airport concourse. But I want to start with a story that you're going to be looking at in 2026. It is actually a bit of a 2027 story, and that's the political landscape of the next mayor's race. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, just remind us of the timeline of that race, when things will start to get going, and what you're going to be looking for.
Yeah, so picking up on the theme of building, it's kind of building a campaign organization. Who's going to be building a campaign organization? So basically, by the end of 2026, or really by the middle of 2026, we should know who's going to be running against Donna Deegan for mayor in the spring 2027 election. So there will be then a months-long campaign. A lot of money is going to be spent and raised, no doubt about it. And so Deegan looks like she's in a pretty strong position in terms of her approval ratings. She's already raised $1 million through her political committee. So one thing we'll be looking for is what her fundraising is in the next report that comes out. Typically, a candidate or an incumbent will try and really have a big surge of funding up front to basically send a message to everybody, I'm in a real strong position. If you want to challenge me, I've got a lot of resources, a lot of political support from funders. But she's a Democrat who is trying to become the first Democrat to be reelected really since Jake Godbold did so maybe a half century ago. So Tommy Azzurri was a Democrat who ran for reelection, did not win.
Her cousin, as it happens.
Yeah, yes, who's related to the current incumbent mayor, Donna Deegan. And then Alvin Brown ran for re-election as well and did not win when Lenny Curry defeated him. So it's always been a competitive county for Republicans and Democrats. And so I would expect there's going to be somebody who's a well-funded candidate to challenge Donna Deegan for her reelection campaign as well. So we'll be looking to see who's going to come forward. Is it going to be a multi-candidate field on the Republican side, or is there going to be a unity, come behind one single candidate to really carry that Republican message forward? And then, so it should be a really fascinating campaign to see how that turns out.
And so we've started to hear a little bit about some internal polling that's kind of strategically leaked about, who might be a possible contender. We saw Jerry Holland's name mentioned. He, of course, has a long history in City Hall, former city council member, but also tax collector, property appraiser. So he's done a lot in the party. Other names that have been bandied about are some city council members. Who are you going to be watching as maybe one of the top, handful or three possible Republicans that might step into the race?
Yeah, that would be Jerry Holland, who has said he's considering a run. That would be Ron Salem, who's also said he's exploring a life beyond his city council tenure, and that would include possibly running for mayor. Rory Diamond often comes up as somebody who would be interested in running for mayor or Congress, so I think he's a potential candidate. And then Wyman Duggan, who's a state representative who's term limited. His name comes up a lot as well as somebody who might be a potential candidate against Deegan in the 2027 election.
Interesting. Are you watching Kevin Carrico at all?
Yeah, not really
City
Kevin
Council
Carrico at all. No, I mean, although I think in the past he said he's not interested in running for mayor. So he's not somebody that really has been a name that's been bandied about. He still has an ability to run again for city council. So either as a district council member, or I don't know if he might want to run for an at-large council seat, but he's not term limited. And I will say this about all council members: it's very difficult historically for a council member to run for mayor in Jacksonville successfully. You can run for mayor, you don't necessarily win, and so it's just been a tough thing. I mean, Jake Godbold was a council member when he became kind of an interim mayor and then won election, but nobody since then has gone from city council to the mayor's office. And so it's just a tough bridge to cross politically. You take a lot of votes, people sort of, you upset people with some of your votes. That maybe hurts a little bit when you run for reelection. But
they often don't have quite the name recognition that perhaps sometimes they think they do. I mean, they're sort of in a political fishbowl. They do, participate in a lot of political things, but sometimes they don't have that sort of countywide, name recognition. And certainly somebody like Donna Deegan does have formidable name recognition, not just because of her current position, but because of her past in the news business.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, she has a lot of built-in name recognition, and certainly from being the incumbent mayor, that's a huge advantage. And a lot of times, as a city council member or city council president even, you're kind of the center of the political universe, and politically in City Hall, people are coming to talk to you, lobbyists are coming to get your support. You kind of feel like you're in the crossroads of stuff, but then there's a poll comes out and you see, well, you're not really as highly regarded. Now, that's probably going to be the case of any Republican who runs against Donna Deegan. They're going to have to do a lot to build up their name recognition. Ron Salem is one county-wide, so maybe he's been on a ballot where everybody's taken a vote. But even there, it's there's a big gap, I think, between being an incumbent mayor and somebody like Mayor Donna Deegan, who was in the broadcasting industry in people's living rooms for so many years, had her name on a marathon, versus somebody who is maybe known within political circles, but not known necessarily within households out there where people are actually going to be doing the voting when the election comes around.
And I just wonder your thoughts if the Republican Party learned any lessons from the previous election. That was the mayor ran against the head of the chamber, Daniel Davis, but he had a long history in local government, and he was, had a difficult primary battle sort of with Leanna Cumber, another Republican. Do you think that there's any lessons from that go round that the party will be applying as they try to challenge the mayor at this time?
Yeah, I think there would be a desire to have one person enter that race without having to compete against other candidates. And I think that would be the goal, would be to kind of coalesce behind a single candidate from the get-go. Now and potentially that means that, Jacksonville has this deal where there's a first election where everybody's in together. They call it a jungle primary, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, you're all in together. And then the top two vote getters, if there's no one who gets 50% plus one vote, go on and have a runoff in May of 2027. So, maybe if they just coalesce around one candidate, then it's winner take all in the first election, which would be unusual as well.
In March.
In March, exactly. So, but no, I think there would be a definite desire for Republicans to coalesce around a single candidate, mainly because that'll, avoid some of the political damage that can come from two Republican candidates trying to become that one person who survives to the runoff, where there's going to be, negative advertising, and that took a toll on Daniel Davis for sure in the 2021 election, 2023 election. I'm going to get my dates scrambled. Yeah, so I think there's a desire for sure for them to coalesce around one candidate.
Any chance that former Mayor Lenny Curry might step in? I mean, we've sort of talked about the fact that he reemerged in the political dialogue this year, by his own choice, sort of inserting himself in some conversations and doing a lot of appearances.
Yeah, I suppose there's always a chance, depending on how it comes together. But I don't see him running for mayor again. I think he has, perhaps part of what he's done is try and talk about this idea that, when he ran in 2015 against Alvin Brown was a pretty popular mayor, and Curry was able to defeat him. Just kind of to say, look, I've won before, Donna Deegan is not unbeatable. Mm-hmm. And if I were to run against her, I think I could win, that kind of sort of motivational thing. I don't think he would, but, I've not heard him say that he's going to run. I think he's probably, to your point earlier, Ann, about the Republican Party wanted to coalesce around one candidate. Perhaps that would be his role more so in terms of just trying to work behind the scenes to try and create have the party come together in advance of the election behind one candidate to really have all the focus of the fundraising, the focus of the party message, the focus of the endorsements and contributions, as opposed to Lenny Curry being out there running again for mayor himself. You never know. I mean, if nobody runs, if nobody else steps up, maybe he's the kind of guy who says, look, I'm a competitor and we want to have somebody run against the mayor, and I'll do it.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, we are talking to Florida Times Union reporter David Bauerlein about the big stories of 2026. If you have a comment or question for David, you can give us a call on air at 904-549-2937. You can also go to firstcoastconnect.org to find all the ways you can connect with us. And if there's a story that you would like to see covered in 2026, I'm sure David is taking suggestions on that as well.
Definitely.
So I want to move on now to a story that you are going to be watching. It is sort of timely because of, sort of where the Jaguars are now in their, progression. Now AFC South champs, they're going to be playing in some new digs pretty soon. But that process is underway, and it's about to displace fans. And there's some decisions to be made about where the team's going to be playing.
Yeah, it's almost peak Jaguars, right? You finally have a team that's competitive and is in the playoffs. And, oh, by the way, now there's going to be reduced seating in the stadium in 2026. And then 2027, we're going to be playing in another city altogether. So it's kind of some ironies abound there in that. But yeah, the big question is going to be, we know that in 2026 it'll be reduced seating, but they are still going to play their home games here in Jacksonville at EverBank Stadium. I think a lot of the top bowls going to be kind of out of operation because they're really going to be kicking in to try and get this stadium built so it's open in time for the 2028 season. So then the big question is, where are they going to play in 2027 when construction is to be going full bore? There's going to be no games here in Jacksonville. The Jaguars themselves have not said yet where they are going to be playing. There's been a lot of media reports that have indicated that some of the home games will be in Orlando at Camping World Stadium, as opposed to being in Gainesville at the University of Florida's stadium, because those were kind of the two considerations, two choices to be looked at. But we still don't really know is how many games would they play in London? And so the Jaguars usually play one game a year in London. In 2027, with their lease agreement with the city, they could play up to 3 games in London, home games in London. So I don't know. It could be anywhere between 1 to 3. Split the difference, it's 2. I don't know. It'd be interesting. But obviously, this is a lot of orchestration that takes place. The NFL owners have to approve it in terms of whatever games they would play over in London, as well as the Orlando. But that seems like it's not really that difficult to get that part of the proposition approved.
The London games are sometimes a sore spot for Jags fans who feels like they kind of like lose a home game when they plplay at home in London. And of course, the owner, Shad Khan, has another team, the Fulham Football Club, that he owns in England. The chance that they will play at Orlando or wherever doesn't bind season ticket holders to attend those games, right? I mean, there's sort of a deal in place that will allow them, even if they choose not to travel and follow the team wherever they play, to hang on to their season ticket rights, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's my understanding of it as well, Ann, that, you don't have to continue. You don't have to go to Orlando and watch the game. Certainly not to London. That's not a requirement right now for being a season ticket holder that you buy a ticket for the London game. So, but that's probably something that a lot of season ticket holders will be watching. Again, you kind of you put yourself in the shoes of a Jaguars fan that's, gone through some distressing seasons, and now they finally got a team that really looks like it's built to last, maybe compete for the next few seasons. And, then you got to make a choice about whether you're going to hit the road to Orlando, which seems doable. I mean, if you're a big fan, that's a 3-hour drive there and back on a Sunday. And then the question then would be, well, how many of those potential home games are going to be overseas, where that's really not something that people are going to be able to go to in an affordable way for a lot of fans.
We're talking about the big stories of 2026 that you need to keep an eye on, and you can join our conversation on air at 904-549-2937. We have a call from Tom on the west side. Good morning, Tom. Go ahead.
Good morning. I just want to say I do not believe the city needs nor can afford to get a new jail. And there are just so many reasons not to get a new jail, proximity being one of the principal ones. But also, I'm kind of annoyed that this pattern of the city government neglecting their facilities and then coming to the taxpayers and saying, we need a new one. That's happened with the courthouse, happened with JEA, and now they're saying it with the jail. Let's just fix up the old jail, modify the system, and save the money because the city's facing a fiscal shortage. So it's just a luxury we can't afford right now.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate your call. We should talk about the new jail. That is one of the stories that is on your top 10 list.
It is.
And that is going to be probably behind a lot of interesting and sometimes difficult discussions. So remind us of what the timetable is for making a decision on where a new jail will go and who's going to be making those decisions.
Sure. So their city's going to be bringing a consultant on board who's really going to help them research different locations where they can build a new jail. It would be a large site, maybe up to 500 acres is some of the figures that have been used. It would be a place where you can relocate the jail, which is downtown now. Also, they have they call it a P farm. It's basically a place where people go to serve short-term prison sentences. Have that also be at this big justice complex, as it's been called,
known as Montgomery Correctional.
Montgomery Correctionals,
yeah.
And that it's currently on the north side. The current main jail is downtown, and also have a juvenile detention facility there. So it would be this really large complex on several hundred acres. They say there's no site at this point that's been identified. The consultant will work with the city to come up with 3 sites that would fit that criteria of a lot of land for consolidation and future growth, and then have a recommendation sometime in the end of 2026. The mayor and the sheriff then would jointly decide which of those 3 should be the one that they then go to city council and seek city council approval for. So it'll be a huge decision. And Obviously, the jail itself, UNF did a poll back when the Jaguars were looking for the stadium deal and kind of where people were on what they would support. And building a new jail actually got a lot more support than renovating the football stadium.
Mm-hmm.
So there could be political support for building a new jail. The question is, once you start to say, okay, this area, then a lot of people in that area go, well, wait a second, this is not how we see our part of town developing. A new jail will be a detriment to property values. It's not what we want in our neighborhood. One reason they're moving the jail out of downtown is people in downtown don't think a jail should be in downtown.
Right.
It hurts the development of downtown. So, obviously it would be, maybe there's a way to design the jail so that it's not really stands out in wherever it ends up being located. They're not talking about a multi-story tower like there is now. It'd be kind of like a, maybe 2-story building spread out kind of at a campus dormitory type of style. So maybe it's not visible from a distance. You'd have, if you have a lot of space, there's a lot of buffer zone, but there would be a lot of difficult conversations in terms of where that goes, what land it goes on, how that affects that part of the city in terms of future development, and just it's a really powerful, not in my backyard aspect of jails. And so you would expect that to really come out wherever they make that final decision. And if they stick with this timeline, that means that, you'll have a decision made prior to the mayoral election and city council elections in 2027. So, people will be watching it too from that political standpoint.
And when it comes to making this decision, there has already been a little heat to emerge from the debate. We saw a city council member propose a bill that would essentially prohibit a new jail facility from being located within the traditional footprint of red line neighborhoods in Jacksonville. Jimmy Peluso has said we want to guarantee to these neighborhoods that have been historically marginalized and underfunded that they won't have to host a new jail. Most people think that it's not practical to think that those older core neighborhoods would even have the space. So where are we going to be looking? Where would have the space in the city for a 500-acre, presumably with some buffer to allow for the fact that people don't want to necessarily be adjacent to a correctional facility? Where in the county might we be looking?
So you'd probably say north of the river and west of the river, north of Interstate 295 and west of Interstate 295, where you have pretty large rural areas, undeveloped property. You would think that at least some of those 3 sites are going to come from those areas. Now, the current location of the Montgomery Correctional Facility, also known as the P Farm, is up on the north side off of Lanny Road. There's already several hundred acres there that the city owns. So I would think that would be at least one of the ones that the consultant will take a look at. But I would think you're looking at rural areas north and west of Interstate 295 would be probably the most likely places. And if you're off of I-295, that makes access a little bit easier for obviously, part of the jail is you have people making arrests all over the county. And so then the one benefit of being downtown is it's centrally located.
Sure.
Right? Nobody's taking people all the way from one side of the county to the other when they are bringing somebody in to be booked into jail. The beaches have their own police departments. They are also part of this mix of the decision. They don't have a decision-making role, but certainly they have input.
Because even though they're making arrests, they're also very often ferrying people to the jail.
Exactly. So, that's the time that an officer is bringing somebody to jail is the time that person's not available to respond to calls. So that drive time is a factor for them. So those are the kind of things they'll be looking at as well as, what is the transportation aspect of bringing people into the jail. And then, of course, you have the idea, too, that the other way that people are transported from the new jail back downtown to the courts where they're being processed through the criminal justice system.
And the sheriff has said that, he does want it to be within striking distance. He doesn't love the idea of it being someplace out where the P Farm is because he thinks that's too far. He had suggested Imison, which is actually inside the 295, Beltway area, just north of the river. But an industrial area, and that's something that he's floated. But again, the mayor, I think, has said we're starting with a clean sheet. It could be anywhere.
Right. Exactly. It could be anywhere. And Imeson would be close to I-295, obviously, and close to where the beach is, closer to the beaches in terms of the drive time there. So yeah, that's an interesting. I actually had not heard that, Ann. So that's interesting that the sheriff is has brought that up as a potential site, because I think that would be. I can see how that could make it into those three that are in the mix.
I mean, I should say that was a comment I think that dates back, at least a year. So I don't know if he's currently, still thinking along those lines. But I know that he had floated that at one point when he was also sort of saying he didn't think that the P Farm area was maybe suitable.
Yeah, and it is a long drive. I mean, his argument on the P Farm has been, look, I mean, if you have people they have people making arrests in Mandarin or way down in the St. Johns County line, that's a long way to drive people. And then they're out of service during the time that they are actually transporting people. So it just makes it hard probably to balance your police presence throughout the city when you have one side of town where police officers make a much longer drive to the jail. Imeson would be an area where there's already industrial. I know there's a lot of, I don't know, there's 500 acres there.
I don't know either.
And part of it would be you'd want room for growth for sure in terms of that. And but that would kind of fit into that area of I-295 and just sort of access from I-295 to different parts of the city.
We have an email from Mark. He says, so do I have this right? We're going, first we were getting a covered stadium, but without air conditioning. Now it won't even be covered. Our share is $750 million. Better win a couple Super Bowls. Is there news on this Stadium of the Future design in terms of having this covered portion and any cost adjustments?
So my understanding is it's still going to have a cover. I had not heard anything other than that. And it will not have air conditioning. He's right about that. The idea is they're going to have these large open areas where it's supposed to be designed to sort of funnel air currents in, so you have air circulation, and that's going to reduce the heating.
I mean, everybody knows summer in Florida, there's plenty of air currents to reduce. It sounds like it could still be a hot.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the more interesting things is how is that actually going to function in reality? I mean, obviously if you just open the doors in your house in September, you have air flowing in, then maybe that doesn't necessarily cool your house though. But so far as I know, it's still going to have a cover. Maybe there's more information out there that I hadn't heard. The whole idea was there was some debate actually when City Council was approving the lease agreement about could we save money by not having a cover? And I remember City Council members were real adamant that that is something that fans really have asked for, have wanted, not just for protection against the rain, but the sun, the heat. So as far as I know, it's still going to have a cover, but it's not going to have air conditioning. It's going to have this system of aerodynamically funneling air currents through the city, through the stadium, and that's going to keep people cooler than they otherwise would be.
There have been some cost estimate increases on this $1.4 billion stadium, but as far as we know, those are cost overruns. Any of those will be shouldered by the Jaguars. That's kind of part of the deal, is it not?
It is. So whatever it costs and above the $1.4 billion, Shad Khan and the Jaguars would pay for that. And it seems like that's going to be likely that would happen. It certainly has been the history of other stadium builds and renovations that they end up costing more than they originally expect they will.
Oh yeah. I mean, that does seem to be the one true through line in any construction project is
right.
Basically you can just about expect overruns. So speaking of money though, I want to talk a little bit about the budget because this last year was supposed to be a very difficult budget year and it ended up being difficult politically, but not that difficult financially. So what are you going to be watching for in the next budget cycle? We know that this last go around, the city council chose to, hold property taxes rather than allow them to sort of follow increases in property values. The whole state now is talking about getting rid of property taxes, possibly something that would go before the voters if the legislature approves it this session. So what are you going to be watching for from a budgetary standpoint?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting budget season to watch. So from the budget standpoint, this current budget, they had $40 million in a one-time contribution from JEA above and beyond what JEA usually does. That fixed a lot of their deficit problems, $40 million, but that's not happening again. They are going to have to shoulder this big cost of moving police and firefighters into the Florida retirement system. So there's an expense involved with that. And that expense is yet not to be really quantified. You have the usual increases in just the cost of doing business. So I think the big thing is, will there be a property tax cut, a millage rate cut? So that's one thing. It was $15 million that they cut the budget by last year for property taxes, and that's out of a $2 billion budget. It was not a huge amount of funding that came out because of that. But are they going to be able to do that again? Is City Council going to try that again? And then where's the money going to come from to balance the budget? If you don't have $40 million from JEA, there will be some increase in the garbage fee, probably. They can go into reserves, and that's a potential way to balance the budget. This kind of gets a little wonky, Ann, so hopefully your listeners can bear with it. But, you know, there's this ordinance that was put in place, I think earlier this last year, that basically says no more than 1.25% of the mayor's budget proposal can come from reserves. So there's a lid on how much reserve money she can put into the budget. And I think it's like $25 or $30 million maybe that she can go into reserves. So that helps offset some of the cost that you're going to have, but that's not going to go all the way. And then it's a question of, do you try to go beyond that? Say, look, we're a city on the move. We need to use more reserves, waive that, or they stick with that as a hard check. And the other thing is, if you go out of reserves, then you can only approve the budget with the supermajority vote, which is 2/3 of council members. So that can create all sorts of different leverage issues in budget night in terms of where do you get the votes. We had this one that went to 4 a.m. last time.
Bring your sleeping bag and your pillow.
Yeah, bring your sleeping bag and your pillow. So there's a lot going on there, I think, in terms of, the mayor has her priorities, things she would like to do. Do those come up on the chopping block again? The city council is, for its part, does it want to do the millage rate cut again? Or is that something to say, look, not this year. There's too many uncertainties. We need to, we've got all these pension costs coming on board. We don't know what the state's going to do with property taxes. So sort of hold our fire on that. Or do they say, look, this is an affordability issue. And also, is this the kind of thing that we want to sort of make an issue in the 2027 campaign? The mayor doesn't want to cut your taxes. We do. We're finding ways to live within our means and also, quote, give back something to the taxpayer.
I'm sure we will hear about that. We've got a call from Jason in San Marco. Good morning, Jason. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. They do refer to Jacksonville as a small market team. And here's a couple of observations. I did go to the game yesterday. I sit very high up, what you would call nosebleed territory. I pay $80 for that ticket. I can tell you that the stadium absolutely was not sold out. At the start of the game, at the kickoff, there were thousands and thousands of empty seats. I also want to share with you that I bought 2 beers and a bag of peanuts. I gave a $5 tip, and that cost me $50. I just think we need to consider putting an ad valorem tax on this franchise. I don't know if any municipality in America does that, but this franchise is supposedly worth $4 billion, and Shad Khan has made money owning it every single year. And it'd be nice to have a little, 1/10 of 1%, something along those lines, of the value of the franchise paid back to the city every year. That's my observation. Thank you for taking my call.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, you can't put a property tax on the Jaguars because the city owns the stadium, so there's nothing really to tax. Maybe they have property that's intangible taxes. Obviously, if there was a desire to force the Jaguars to pay more money, then the city could have done that through the stadium and said, look, if you want a new stadium, it's on you. But then the Jaguars probably would have said, okay, we're going to another city.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
That's always been the balance there, right?
That's the balancing act. I mean, they have a say too in this. I think it's probably, when I watched the game yesterday, I did see some empty seats there, although it looked like it was more full than some of the other games I've seen for the home games. They're obviously going to have a full house for their first home playoff game. But I think the question would be, what is it going to cost for people to go when the new stadium opens? Mm-hmm. To some extent, I'm sure the Jaguars are going to kind of recoup their investment in the stadium through just getting more money from ticket sales.
Sure.
So is it going to be affordable? The Jaguars say they still will be affordable seats for people to go to the game.
Although to Jason's point, affordability is, in question when it costs you $50 for popcorn and a couple of beers. But
right.
Just briefly, we got an email from Clyde saying we continue to overlook the fact that those imprisoned in the jail are presumed innocent. We need to review the issue of a reasonable bond and alternatives such as electronic monitoring instead of housing inmates. That is a debate that has happened on a national level, certainly, and not one that has happened too much on a local level. David Bauerlein, you did a great story on all of the 10 headlines that you're going to be watching. We did not get to all of them, but of course you can find David's reporting at the Florida Times-Union. That's at jacksonville.com. Metro reporter David Bauerlein, thank you so much for being here today, and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Ann. Happy New Year to you as well.
All right, we're going to be back in just a minute with a new exhibit that's coming to St. Augustine, how a near-death experience and one of the world's most influential architects are the inspiration for it. Welcome back. Well, it's a religious site that has inspired the faithful and the world of architecture for more than 140 years. Here to discuss the exhibit based around the Basilica in Barcelona, the Basilica de la Sagrada Familia, poorly done there. The Basilica de la Sagrada Familia, that is an exhibit called Sacred Pilgrimage, Gaudí and Galban. We're joined by Jennifer Flynt. She is the executive director of the St. Augustine Art Association, which is hosting the exhibit. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Taryn Mohajeri, the exhibit's curator. Taryn, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
So tell us, after I kind of butchered the name there, but the Basilica in Barcelona, the Sagrada Familia, is a famous creation of Antoni Gaudí. He is known for his sort of extravagant, sometimes whimsical creations. This one very spiritually based. Right. Tell us a little bit, just first of all, about the history of this basilica and how it came to influence the artist who is showing at the St. Augustine Art Association.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, the Basilica Sagrada Familia was started, like you said, over 140 years ago. And Antoni Gaudí, the original architect, had a vision in order to create a building that basically was the entire Bible in stone. He's considered God's architect. And basically this building, for so many people who were illiterate, this was the way for them to absorb the Bible through the images. So several of the images on the outside of the building are sculptures of pieces from the Bible. So, and the way that we got involved with this project, the artist's name is Galban, and he's a Cuban-American artist. He has visited Sagrada Familia very many times. And the most recent time he was there, he suffered a heart attack. And it was in 2023. He sat down and he just, in that state of mind, felt that Gaudí was kind of giving him some messages about the building, and he was seeing things in a new light that he'd never seen before. And so he started sketching right then. When he came back to the States, he realized it was a very serious heart attack, and he ended up having to have some surgery. And once that was over, he wanted to make like an homage to Gaudí and the Sagrada Familia because he survived this experience.
And that's an extraordinary story. He's actually a medical doctor, and so he sort of recognized the signs that something was happening in a cardiac arrest type situation.
Yes.
He was sketching even as this was happening, which is wild to think about. But he is obviously very inspired by the architect Gaudí, and then also just by sort of the visions he was experiencing.
Absolutely. What's really exciting about the pieces that he created, if you're looking at Sagrada Familia from the outside, you're seeing a lot of these stone sculptures. But if you walk into the Sagrada Familia, the way that Antoni Gaudí placed all the different stained glass in terms of the design, there's different colors coming in at different times of the day, and it's just completely saturated with these colors. So these paintings are basically, though they're 2D, there is lots of texture. Galban uses a lot of background texture, so you can almost feel like it's popping out. And then he has all the color and the sculptures together. So that's what these pieces look like.
And Jennifer, this exhibit is called Sacred Pilgrimage, Gaudí and Galban. Why was it, of interest for the Art Association to bring this exhibit in? Tell us a little bit about kind of where it's been and how St. Augustine fits into that larger picture.
Well, Taryn could probably tell you more about where it's been. I know it's been in Tampa. Was it Miami?
Clearwater.
Clearwater.
Yeah.
Okay. And so for us, we have a very long-standing, St. Augustine does, history with Spain. Obviously, our founders and some of the historical figures that you see monuments of in St. Augustine are from Spain. And so last year we had done a Sister Cities exhibit with 2 artists from Spain, and it was a St. Augustine, Ávila, Spain correlation. And this year when Taryn approached us about this, I just felt that why not add to that history, because we're always looking to do exhibits and bring in artists from different backgrounds that speak to that history of Spain and Florida. And I'm from Miami, so I have a lot of Cuban friends, so I love the artwork. It's very colorful. And when I saw the art, I was like, oh yes, we absolutely have to do this. So it's been our pleasure to invite them here and have them, have this beautiful exhibit in our gallery.
And it is through the end, it's through February 1.
Yes.
And so it's up for another,
almost
month
a month
plus.
Yeah.
But it is a timely exhibit, in part because this Basilica, which has been under construction for 140 odd years, is set to finally be completed this year because of the anniversary of Gaudí's death.
Right.
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
yes.
so tell us a little bit about the path to get to here, why it's taken so long.
Wow. In terms of the building itself, honestly, it all comes down to money. When we think about some of the larger cathedrals in Europe, they took 200 or 300 years to create. And so it's just unusual for it to be happening in our time.
Yeah.
And so because he lived in the late 1800s and, lived up until 1926, then we're experiencing what it would have taken. You have to have several different architects and designers that can create that work, that his vision, and keep it going. So that's why it's taking so long. The timeliness of Galban, the painter, having this experience in 2023, and then it so happened that the next year was going to be 1 year before the 100th anniversary of Gaudí's death. We were able to start the actual exhibit in Clearwater on June 25th, which was Gaudí's birthday.
Yeah.
And so it began on his birthday, and it will end on his anniversary of his death.
Well, the exhibit is at the St. Augustine Art Association through February 1st. The Art Association is open Tuesdays through Sundays. Jennifer Flynt, Taryn Mohajeri, thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
All right. Up next, how the 13-4 Jags flipped their last season record and how they need to prepare for the playoffs after their decisive victory over the Titans.
Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Accidents can happen when you least expect it. For decades, our attorneys have dug out the facts to help juries decide who's at fault.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
Join me, Courtney Lewis, and the Jacksonville Symphony in Jacoby Symphony Hall on January 16th and 17th to experience Bruckner's powerful 8th Symphony, an emotional journey from quiet beauty to triumphant glory. Tickets and information at jacksymphony.org.
On the next Fresh Air, journalist Jacob Soboroff joins us to talk about his new book, Firestorm, The Great Los Angeles Fires and America's New Age of Disaster. He covered the fires as a reporter while watching his childhood neighborhood, the Pacific Palisades, burn, bringing a deeply personal lens to a national crisis. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
Affordability, inflation, tariffs, jobs. Where does the economy stand now that we're officially in the new year?
Inflation is something that people feel. It's not just about the statistics. I don't think that this issue of affordability is going away.
The money ladies, Rana Faruhar and Michelle Singletary, are back to help us prepare financially for 2026. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
At the end of the Constitutional Convention in 1787, Elizabeth Powell asked Benjamin Franklin, "What have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" The founding father replied, "A republic if you can keep it." 250 years later, his words resonate. How fragile is our democracy as the new year begins? We hear your take next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, the Jags are officially the champs of the AFC South Division, and they are in the middle of an 8-game winning streak. Here to explain how we got here and the challenges that remain, we are joined by Alessandra Pomprian. She is sportscaster with our news partner, News4Jax. Welcome back from vacation. First of all, nice to see you again in person.
Thank you. I was actually right next to the beach last Monday, on a playground when I called in because I was on a run. So I would rather be there, to be honest. But hey, listen, the Jaguars just won, so I'm happy they were here.
To that. No, I'm glad that you were here too. And games, I'm guessing the stadium are getting a lot more fun to be at. I mean, we were sort of talking about them in our first section about, the cost, but just the enthusiasm is really, just unavoidable right now. You really have a team that has, surprisingly, as I mentioned, turned from like 4-13 to 13-4. It is quite a turnaround.
Literally. I mean, no one would have thought that the Jaguars, who, by the way, many people are saying the Jaguars are the Super Bowl favorite now. Who would have thought that? Wow. I know I saw Hard Rock Bets posted, and John Daly picked the Jaguars. Fox Sports, they were talking about in their pregame show. And Julian Edelman said, the Jaguars are, you got to watch out for them. Who would have thought that? Like you said, they were one of the worst teams last year. Now they're one of the best teams. And, they could go to the Super Bowl. There's a very highly percentage chance that, they may be going to California just because they're playing so good right now. And I actually asked Antonio Johnson after the game in the locker room, I was like, how crazy is it? I mean, you guys were from where you were last year to where you are this year. And he was like, it's quite crazy. But he was like, they brought in the right people, the right coaches, the right players to be able to have this success that they're having. And now they get to reap the benefits, but they only get to, be excited for one day because now they really have to focus on the Buffalo Bills, who are a really good team. They also have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and they'll be hosting them Sunday at 1 p.m.
And so they are South Division Chiefs, but they're not in the toughest division. And so they're going to start to be moving to play teams that are maybe more challenging.
No, absolutely. I mean, the AFC South, it's definitely not the most competitive division, but it is good. They were neck and neck with the Texans for that title, but of course the Jaguars won it. By the way, it was the third time in program history that they were able to win the AFC South title, which is quite crazy. I think 2017 and 2022 were the other 2 years. But the Buffalo Bills are really good. They've been in the playoffs. They're kind of mainstays in the playoffs. They have Josh Allen, who's, one of the superstars, the leaders of the NFL. So yeah, they're going to have a tough test, but no game is going to be easy in the playoffs. Obviously, you have the best teams competing against each other, hoping to get to the Super Bowl. So, it's so different. And I think I'm going to ask the players this in the locker room this week is like the mindset kind of has to change because if you don't win, you're done. Your season's over with. So the temperature kind of turns up a notch or two in the playoffs just because your whole entire season is really on the line.
And so let's just talk about some fun moments. Cam Little with another, major, this is like his second record-setting field goal.
Yeah, so he hit the record earlier this year, which was a 68-yarder in Las Vegas, and then he just, that was 67, and this past one was 68. So he basically has the two longest field goals in NFL history, and he's like 21 years old, I'm pretty sure, which is
extraordinary.
Insane. Yeah, by the way, awesome guy. Like, Cam Little is he's a phenomenal kicker. He's an even better person off the field. I could not rave about him anymore. And I think after the game, he was so excited. Obviously, he had a big smile on his face, but he was like, we got to keep going. He's been a huge part of this success for the team, and hopefully he can continue that in the playoffs.
Yeah, he really has been. And so what are you players that you're most going to be kind of watching to make sure that they're up to par and performing like they need to?
I mean, everyone's going to look at the quarterbacks in this game. You have Trevor Lawrence, who's playing the best of his career. He just set the franchise record for the most touchdowns in a season, beating Blake Bortles, who set the record back in 2015. So, you're going to look at Trevor Lawrence. Everyone's obviously talking about him right now. And then you're also looking at Josh Allen on the other side. Like, you can't talk enough about how good of a quarterback he is. But I think for the Jaguars defense, you got to look up front, especially at the front seven. They have to be able to disrupt Allen because if he has the time, he's going to make the plays. And so, this is a really big test for the defense and Anthony Campanelli's defense, who, by the way, is one of the best in the league, if not the best in the league at this point.
And Liam Cohen, I mean, he really gets, I guess, the bragging rights. How much does all of this have to do with just this change in leadership?
Everything. I mean, it's not just Liam Cohen, too. It's James Gladstone. It's Tony Basilica. I think those three. One, you can see that they're like friends off the field. Like you can see that they actually like each other. And I think that is a huge part of why they're having so much success because they can work really well together. And obviously, they made the bets on the rookies. They made the bets on the guys that they brought in, and free agency and during the trade deadline. And obviously, those bets have paid off. So now we get to talk about their success. So it's great. I'm really happy for Jaguars fans, for Jacksonville to be able to get this success. And now I'm hoping that we get to go to California.
Yeah, that's right. I hope you get to go to California too. Alessandra Pomprian, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
it. All right. And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have comments or questions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at wjct.org. And you can find all of our past and current shows at firstcoastconnect.org. You can also sign up for our new daily newsletter while you're there. Join us tomorrow when we talk about JEA's environmental challenges, from community concerns about dirty fuel to a failing grade on a Sierra Club report card. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjax.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Folio Weekly Magazine proudly supports WJCT, serving Northeast Florida since 1987. Folio, dedicated to delivering local stories and perspectives. Available at more than 650 locations or visit folioweekly.com.